Hi, welcome back to another TerranScapes video. Today I wanted to give you a revisit of the castle project and take a look at some of the things that have been done. I meant to shoot this video a few days ago actually, but there were just a couple things I wanted to get done before I posted the video, and now it's at a point where I have to take some of these things and put them into molds. I'll show you those a little bit later, so anyway, this is a good breaking point to shoot a video update. So because there's several things that are kind of hard to see at a distance, I wanted to at least give you a sort of panoramic shot of all of the pieces mostly together as they're going to be. I've been fitting these tower elements in the back here together. That took a little while, and finished the rear tower so you can get a sense of its scale compared to the other pieces. It ended up quite a bit larger than I had originally planned. I think it was supposed to finish maybe about yay high, and I just had cut some extra foam and was trying some piecing things together, and it just struck me as right that way, and so I ended up going with it a little bit larger. But it's nice, stands out prominently. It says that it's the dominant feature of the piece, and that was always the way it was supposed to be intended. So let's break the camera off the tripod, and I'll walk you around and talk to you about some of the elements that have been updated. So I did some work on the ramp, and you'll notice that a lot of areas have been spackled in. I was really unsure about the tiling, and once I had cut it, I kept cutting it, and I got to the point where I was like, I've cut too much. So I've backfilled in, so it is a little hard looking at this to imagine what this is going to quite look like. But these are going to be solid squares. Oh, magnets. These are going to be solid squares with the two smaller ones in between, so all these white indicate where it's solid, and these will not show once it's foam coated and painted. This is I sanded this all down, and in any case, once I'd gotten to this point, I didn't want to redo this whole thing again, as I've already scrapped some work along the way, and I just wanted to maintain this as much as I could. One of the things that was a little tricky about it was these squares didn't really conform to this layout. So what I had to do is create a little border. Actually, a friend suggested that to set that off and to allow these lines to match up. Although, magnets are a little. Oh, there we go. So allow these to line up and then break that up and then have a difference in transition, because these actually came out just a little bit off, and I've actually in frame. Here we go. Sorry about that. These came out a little bit off, and in fact I had to go back in, and I've actually recut this line twice. I realized I just wanted it to match up the back. This is orientated wrong at the moment. This needs to rotate a little bit, but you get the idea. So these lines will match up with this. It'll match up to this first row here, and then this will set up the transition down from the side. So it gives you a sense of what the ramp's going to look like. I did put in the magnets finally for the ramp as well as the walkway. I'll show you that in a second. I put in 3, and it's a pretty strong bond at the moment, but it's probably going to be a little less strength when it gets foam coated, but it doesn't need much because this is already supported by the ground, and it's just to keep it from jostling around during play. So that should be fine. I went in, let's take a look at the interior here real quick. Well, actually, wait a minute. Let's finish with the magnets. So I put in the magnets on the walkway, and I put in 4 as I really wanted this to be a really strong bond, as this is going to be, free hanging, basically. Let's do this. So that way, tough to do this one-handed. My goodness. Anyway, there we go. But this way it will, there we go, in frame, Mike, in frame. But you can see even with just supported by one side, it's holding it up at the moment, and the other piece will lock it in nice and tight. So even though that's going to lose just a little bit of strength at the end, because of the foam coat will push these apart just a hair. Should still be plenty strong enough to hold that up. And again, this is going to be a little heavier as well, but it has some nice friction to keep it from sliding, so I think that's going to hold up and play very well. And if after I foam coated it and put it all together, if it still feels weak, I can always drill another hole and add a couple magnets to each side if I feel like I really need to. On the interior, well, of course, here's the large tower. One thing that I did is I left this a little bit deeper than I did with these smaller towers. And originally I had planned on cutting in sort of like arrow slots. You'll see that on some of the Helm Deep walls. And I just did not feel comfortable making that cut freehand, as I don't have a jig for it. I could probably go in with a knife to make the slice, and that would be a nice clean look, but beveling out the bottom of it and getting that piece to come free, I don't know. I didn't feel confident about it, so I decided to leave it as it is. And you just have to aesthetically imagine that there's a way to fire out of this. This is going to be receiving some fins that I'll show you in a minute, so it's going to change the overall look of this quite a bit as well. But anyway, that was one thought, is I just wanted to sit this a little deeper, give this a more prominent ridge, change that overall look. I decided to go with these long sweeping lines all the way from the bottom to the top, and you can see there's a couple bevels on the way up the tower to change its diameter and shrink it as it goes up. I think I had mentioned before that I was going to make it larger at the top and flute it down, and as soon as I started to take the foam, I actually had done some of these cones and set them upside down on top, and that looked horrible. I don't know what I was thinking. So I ended up disassembling those slightly and then reusing them for the bottom, and then bringing that taper up to the top. And really was pretty proud of getting this transition on these beveled areas, and it just added a lot to the piece. And I really like how the whole tower has come out. And it might be useful to see it maybe from a different angle, a little higher up, get a sense of that. This tower stands probably, I want to say it's about 33 inches tall at this point, so it's pretty substantial. From there, I started working on getting these to fit together, and it required excising out foam, in these contours, so that the tower could sit in between these two pieces. And luckily, I had a few offcuts from an earlier version of this walkway that didn't come out right that I could use, Oh, actually, no. I used the bottom of the wall there to strike that line on that side, so I knew where to shave, and drew in a line here and used that as a guide to get that angle. Now you'll notice right now that there is a gap in between these areas, but these are just, they tend to walk around as I'm playing with it, but they will get snugged up a bit, and then of course a little foam coat in there is going to seal that up nice and tight. Once I had those done, then it was on to adding entryways into the large tower. So what I've opted to do, and I'll show you the door that's going to go in here in a second, is carve out the door here, add in some stairs that are going to make that transition in height so you can walk down. I think the stairs came out, they're simple, but I really just liked them. I went for some large blocks and some strong cuts with it, again because it's going to get foam coated and that's going to obscure some detail. So I didn't want to try to get too fancy with the brickwork on those. And then coming around to this side, try not to stay out of the light, there'll be a door that's going to fit into that recess there to enter onto the walkway on this side. And then down at the bottom, in the dark here, you can see the cutout for the door at the bottom to receive models from the ground floor. You can see here in the lines that I have repeatedly been pushing this wall back and restriking where I think it's going to be. This should be its final location, pretty much where it's at right now. And I've also marked off the tower here, and that line is a little hard to see because it's right against it. But this has opened up a couple inches on the interior here, so this is over 8 or 9 inches now wide in the middle. So if you've been following this video, there's plans to hopefully accommodate one or more Mumakil inside the inner walkway. So this should accommodate those models much more easily. I feel much more confident about that. Also, I've been working on the back wall, and while it doesn't look like a lot of work has been done at this point, some real planning has taken place at this stage to prepare for the carving that's about to happen, probably starting tomorrow. What I've done is I've bulked up some of these areas to try to meet the wall, as the plan is to have the rock coming down onto the wall and coming down like this into the interior. I may add another piece of small foam right here as well. I left a little gap here at the bottom so I could have this be freely sliding in and out, as I'm going to paint the interior and the exterior of all the structures separate from the rock wall. Then I can place them in place, and I will be able to then add the rock wall and paint that. This was a decision made because I just don't feel confident trying to get paint into the cracks and crevices of all the surfaces from a very awkward angle on the inside like this, having it all assembled and then painting it. So I've left this all unattached so that I can pull these pieces out, individually paint them, then reassemble it, seal it up, and touch up anywhere that it needs to be touched up. So what I've done there is I've dry fit basically the wall into some bulked out foam to create a little bit of a pan back here a little bit, a little bit of a transition coming down to the ground. It's still going to be fairly steep, but it should make it a little bit more of a transition coming up off the back. Currently the wall is at this point here. This is 8 inches deep of foam going this direction. So that's going to give me the ability to taper it as it comes up to the top. And the plan that I have right now is, since I'm going to be adding some fluting and other elements to the top of this tower, the back side of this tower, as you can see, to fit it, by pushing this piece back, I had to push this tower back as well. So I had to excavate foam behind this to accommodate the tower. I actually cut out a little more than I needed, but then I realized that actually I'm going to need to probably take this, and I'll pan back here and point a little bit more easily here. Probably what I'm going to do is tear down a good chunk of this foam and have the rock wall mountain area come up like that and then drop down like this. So that way I can drop it below the height of the tallest tower, and that way any elements that are on the tower are not going to be interfered with by the rock wall and won't look out of place as well. So it'll look like a dominant feature as well, compared to the topography that represents the landform behind it. So I finished bulking out some of this. It's pretty rough at this point, but I didn't want to try to make it too tight, as I'm going to need to add sculpt-a-mold and a lot of carving, and at the end I can dry fit in some foam to fill in some areas and sculpt-a-mold that, so this will get a little refinement, but overall it's been fleshed out to accommodate some of the the shape of the wall. As I mentioned before, this ended up with a little top being heavy here, so this way it'll look like the rock wall is a little bit deeper here, and as it recedes, this walkway will conform to that recession, if that makes any sense, as it cuts up behind the top tower. Let's see, what else? Also went through and cleaned up all of these pieces to get them ready for foam coat. There were several areas that I needed to touch up, inside some of these, sort of, I don't know, anti-crenellations, whatever. There were some cuts that were missing, so I had to go back in and do those cuts. Again, realign this floor, match it up to that, and check on some gaps that had formed between the joins of some of these areas, so I had to get spackle in there and clean that up. At this point, just before I leave this, friend was looking at it, was mentioning that it might be nice, if I pan back it might make more sense, to have some kind of an architectural element sitting at the very back of this inner area to tie it to the wall, as well as imply that there's other things deeper into the mountain. And that's present on Helm Deep. If you've looked at that model, it has quite a large facade that backs against the inner wall, and sort of implies, that, I don't know, that's where they store all their food and where they hide in the movie once the Helm's Deep is overrun. So originally I had planned on putting in a small cave entrance and putting a portcullis against that with my small grate that I've shown several videos back now, probably several months back. But I am lightly contemplating doing something different, possibly using some Herstarts elements. I don't know. So maybe some thoughts on that. I am on a tight timeline, however, so I don't want to overextend myself for one small final piece that might set the project back too much. So it's under debate, and I'll be thinking about it for the next couple days. And if the customer has any input on that, I'd be happy to hear it. So the last thing that I've been working on, is to try to create some of the elements that are going to give it more of a Mordor-ish feel. And this has actually been quite a bit more difficult than I anticipated, as, it's just tricky to come up with something that might be castable, that looks appropriate, that has the right scale to it, etc., etc. So what I ended up doing was developing a few different pieces. The first piece I put together is going to go, it looks like this, and you can see it's a row of jagged spikes. I put a small indent in the smaller ones in the top ridge to break up their shape just a little bit. And this is hopefully going to be castable. I'm a little concerned because these elements are quite thin and those are a lot of small points. Unfortunately, I never got that pressure caster I was talking about a while back. So I'm going to have to be digging into these little tips with a toothpick every time I cast it to ensure they're bubble free. But this piece, I was envisioning placing it against, let me just make sure that's in frame, it is, placing that in the against the wall, and then I can cast that multiple times and tile it in along the wall, trim it to fit wherever it needs to be. So that's the first piece. The second pair of pieces, and these are all made with styrene. This is 0.06 styrene sheets, plastic card basically. So basically, let's do this, there we go. So first element is an upright row of large toothy spikes, saw blade-esque. And the second one is a slightly smaller version of that. So the thoughts with these would be able to place these against prominent in frame, prominent ridge lines along some of the embossing of the different areas of the towers, along the buttresses. Oh wait a minute, this one's in frame, right? Yeah. So I can put these along the buttresses, and because they're small, this one's a smaller one, I can pair them, so I could do it even like 3 rows, right, with this one on either side. So that's the thought that I would do with those. But to adorn the tops of the towers, I took a look at some of the elements on the black gate, mostly for some inspiration. And there's quite a large assortment of, sort of jagged, triangular, not jagged, but, sharp, triangular pieces. So what my thought is with this is to develop a few of these in different sizes. So I have the smallest one here. This is approximately, I don't know, what is that, maybe 4 inches, 5 inches in length. Same plain one. Then did, that'll focus. Are you going to focus on that? There we go. Did a slightly larger one with some spikes coming off of it. This has a slightly higher spike count than the model for the Black Gate has on some of it, but I don't know. I wanted it to be a little different. I didn't want to model it exactly. And then I have the largest one, which has definitely an aggressive, toothy look. Then what I did is I also, let's see if the light will catch it. There we go. I added in another layer of plating to give it like a multi-level metal plate look. No rivets or anything like that. I don't know how it's all put together, but you don't see any rivets on the Black Gate, so I decided not to worry about that. So the thought with these, cast them multiple times, as many as I need, and I'll just keep casting I'm going to pour the rubber for these tonight, just as a molding tip. I don't know if this is going to work out. It should work out all right, though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to backfill these with modeling clay, soft modeling clay, smooth that to a perfect taper. Then I can mount that and cast it as a single piece, so that when I demold it, it will be a solid resin piece. It's a little more resin than I probably would like to do for each piece, but there's no way to cast this with this V channel in it as well as these points as a single piece, and I'm going to have to cast a lot of these as it is, so I wanted to keep it as simple as I can for the casting process. Again, worried about these tips, but we'll get in there with a toothpick and see if we can keep them bubble free. So the plan really at this point is on these smaller towers is to probably do some kind of an alternate placement. Let's see if I can, I don't know, this has got a lot of white behind it, so I don't know, you'll have to use your imagination a little bit. Do maybe an alternate pattern of these around these towers. This larger one will be for the large flying tower that's over there in the corner. Do larger elements like that on it, something like that, and then also alternate some of those with some, you know, sort of perhaps like some bladed elements like this. This is just simple, you know, one level cut out of styrene. These I can, you know, cut by hand relatively simply, so these I'll cut as needed and maybe do a couple different shapes. I saw on some of the spots on the black gate, you know, where they were faced. It's hard to do this at this angle, you know, where they're faced kind of up, some where they're faced kind of down. Some of these I was thinking could go on the underside of the bevels of some of the towers, and I'll be playing around with it as I go forward. And some of these simple elements may change in shape as I go through it. Lastly, the real trick is what to do with the big tower in the back. Now, if you've looked at the, you know, some of the Lord of the Ring Mordor elements, buildings, they have some really aggressive finning on the top of some of the towers. So I wanted to try, let's pan up a little bit on that. So I wanted to try that with this piece here, and that's partly why, again, I want to remove some of this rock wall behind it to give me the space for it. But I'm thinking at this point that what I'd like to do is, put on the top pieces that look, excuse me, a bit like this. So this is maybe 5.5 inches long, and these are not glued in yet, but I've done a double layer of ultra thin plastic card, basically, to give it like a plated metal look. It'll get that on both sides, and then these are cut, beveled to fit on the crenellation, the sort of beveled top of the tower as well, and probably do some kind of perhaps an alternating pattern, something, I don't know. I don't want it to look too crazy, so once I get a few, I might blue tack them in place and take a look at it and see what I think about it. But that's the thought there, something like that for the top to give it a really distinctive look. The last thing on this is that I did take a minute and try to look at some elements that were curved, you know, so I put together a shape like that, you know, something like that maybe, with a plate there. I was thinking I might cast this with a plate to both be the top of the, you know, pour for the resin, as well as sort of emulating a metal plate that, you know, this was bolted to, and then it gives it more surface area to bond to the actual surface of the castle. I kind of liked this one. I started working on a bigger one and trying to make it double-sided. I didn't like this one at all. I really didn't appreciate the way that was coming out, and I suddenly realized that all of the elements that I had put together before that all had straight sides. And I felt like it was a little risky to start intermixing straight angles and curved angles, you know what I mean, curved shapes, and putting those together, and I thought that might be too much of a juxtaposition. So I decided to abandon curved shapes. That was partly why I ended up going with you know, a much more triangular fin shape for the top of the large tower, and I feel confident that that's going to look a little bit better. At least that's my initial impressions. Oh, there are many things to talk about. If you're following still, congratulations. I did do quite a bit of, let's pan back here so you can see me, and I did do quite a bit of work on arrow slits that had been discussed before, dressing up the fronts of these towers. You know, it was thought that perhaps I could put in, you know, arrow slits like this facing into the walkway, that sort of idea. I contemplated putting some on the larger tower in the back here. And after taking a look at it, I actually practiced on the back side of a hidden area, actually behind here on this piece, as this tower now obscures this back, say 3 or 4 inches wide area, but it had already been bricked. It gave me a perfect spot to practice on. So what I did is I did some carving of arrow slits directly into the stone, and it felt like they didn't really show up very well. And then I made some very thin shaved sheets of extruded polystyrene, the pink foam, carved smaller bricks onto those, sculpted out some of the foam using a hot knife, glued that in place, you know, beveled out the arrow slit. And what I found was that it's incredibly difficult to get it perfectly lined up, to get it at a perfect 90-degree angle. Part of the problem is that not all of these bricks are, exactly 90 degree. Every line is not perfect on it. So it either looks wrong because it's at an odd angle, much like this camera is right now, or it doesn't match up with the brickwork. And after spending 2.5 hours trying to figure out how I could do it, I decided I'm not going to do it. And I took a look at the Kirith Ungol model that really some well done versions of it online, and I realized there's not an arrow slit on the entire structure. So I feel justified in avoiding those at this point, as I think there's too much risk of creating something unsightly on some of the prominent surfaces at the front of this. It's not something you want to have an eyesore or a mistake on, and I don't feel confident that I can pull off arrow slits at this point. I'd originally planned on possibly casting those and then scoping out areas for it, and I just think more work and too much risk and not necessary. So that's my thinking on that right now. So I've already gone way longer than I probably should on this, but as there's spent so much design process going into this piece, there's been a lot to explain, so hopefully it's helped you to understand at least some of the directions that I've been going in and why, and gives you a sense of where it's going to go in the future as well. Please feel free to leave comments and questions down below. Always happy to get those. I say that every time and I mean it. And I really appreciate some of the feedback that I get on some of my videos. And hopefully I'll be back in probably about a week with this looking mostly done at that point. That's my plan at this point. I've got some ideas on how I'm going to paint the rock wall. I'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll see if that actually works out. I'll explain how I do it. And well, we'll both see how it comes out then. But hopefully you'll come back for that video down the road. So thanks for watching.